Welcome and thank you for joining us on our webinar today. My name is John. I'm one of the directors here at KOPE and I'm responsible for our growth within the business. Alongside me today is Charlotte Garrett, Head of Industry Strategy at KOPE as well. So some of you may know us from industry, maybe others not so much, but nonetheless we've been around a while. Charlotte and I joined the team within KOPE within months of each other back in 2022. KOPE was actually born back in 2019, for anyone who's not aware, following the successful acquisition of a previous company that our co-founders also created. And when we were founded back at that point, we had the vision then that we still have today, which is that we're dedicated to revolutionising how the built environment is designed and constructed. So that's really key in terms of what we're presenting today, and obviously our thoughts and so on around the platform. So innovation is at the heart of everything that we do, and we know that it's essential to transform the construction industry. We're continuously, as a business, seeking new and better ways to design and build, thinking about how that might work for our clients. And we also take calculated risks and explore innovative possibilities. Our experienced team constantly questions and seeks basically to improve the construction industry every day. That's what we live and breathe. So we've worked with clients such as Zelka Homes, Saint-Gobain, Bart Mallow, and many, many others. And during that time, we've realised that offsite has had significant problems and no one was really trying to solve them. So we're actually leaders in computational design and automation. We've built generative design for Autodesk, amongst other tool sets that we've helped augment and improve over the years. And we've also built technology for some of the world's largest projects. So we knew that we had the skills and the knowledge to solve these challenges. Hence, we're building the platform for offsite. I mentioned Zelka Homes there. So this was one of our key projects that led to the idea of KOPE in the first place. They needed help with their digital design process and rethinking their approach from the ground up. They faced unique challenges, as everyone does, in that they required a high level of accuracy and precision in their designs for the factory. And this meant that any changes that were being made were at that time being terribly slow to incorporate. So because of that, we decided to take the approach that we would treat everything placed in the modules that they created as a system and encode each of those elements with its own rules and constraints. That way we can ensure that any changes would be automatically affected, any changes that automatically affected other connected systems downstream would essentially reduce any abortive work. So this is where the idea of kit of products engine, was born, which you now know simply as KOPE. So before we get any further into, obviously, KOPE, the platform that we have, how it can help you, let's just run through a couple of bits of housekeeping quickly. So we'll begin with a short presentation about KOPE, our platform, obviously, how it fits into your organisation, and then we'll do some live demonstrations so that you can see the product in action. We'll also then have a Q&A session towards the end, so be sure to submit your questions and I'll tell you how you can do that in a sec. And also stick around to the end of the session as we'll share with you how you can access KOPE and try it out for yourselves. So by the end of the time today, hopefully you'll understand a bit more about how offsite is solving problems in construction and how KOPE is ultimately solving offsite. So if you do have any questions as we go, please pop these in the Q&A tab on Slido. So again, the QR code there, if you want to scan that with your mobile, or head to the website and enter that join code. And then you can just use the Q&A tab and submit your questions there. Also, if you are using your mobile, you'll see a polls tab. That's where the questions that we're going to ask you in a second will pop up as well. So be sure to tap on that as well. The other part then is we'll record this session. So if you do have to shoot off or you think a colleague might benefit from hearing about KOPE's platform, be sure to drop an email to myself and we can get that recording across. All right then, without, I guess, any further ado, I'll hand you over to Charlotte to kick us off.
Hello, John, can you hear me?
Oh, Charlotte, I'm not sure, we can't hear you. I don't know, maybe it's setting on your microphone.
Look at the chat.
Okay, go for it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry, that's my
Perfect.
fault.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks, John. So we know those of you listening today are from a wide spectrum of roles and organisations in both design and construction. But it'd be great just to start this off with answering the following. So we'd really like to know, what tools do you currently use when preparing a tender or preparing a quote for your projects and your products? So if you can just type your answer in the polls tab on Slido to respond. If you can't see it or are having trouble finding the poll, please just give us a quick nudge in the chat and we'll see if we can help you with that. Excel's a popular one. It's something we actually see quite a lot of our clients as well when we work with them. Pencil, I like that. Great, yeah. Bluebeam's one we've seen a couple of times as well with some of our clients too. But I think Excel seems to be one that dominates with this, so it's interesting to see that Excel is a great tool. It's very flexible, and I think a lot of people use it in their own ways with the processes. Great. I'm going to move on to the next one. So what we'd really like to know as well is not just about what tools you're using, but roughly how long do you estimate it takes to get a tender return out the door? So from receipt of drawings and models. So thinking about if you're maybe a specifier in the industry, thinking about how long it might take between you issuing a 3D model and requesting a quote back, how long you might wait to hear back, and obviously on the flip of that, if you're a supplier on the call, understanding how long it might take for you to turn that around once you receive the request from someone. Yeah, obviously appreciate, depending on the project and the size of the project, I know that has a big impact, but it's interesting to see how long it does take.
Also in Charlotte, there's a couple of people that have mentioned obviously they're designers, so maybe not applicable, but yeah, we recognise that this question is obviously a bit more tailored to kind of manufacturers, contractors, that kind of thing. But if you are a designer on that point, I don't know if you've got a kind of a rough idea of how long these things are taking generally within projects, that would also be good to see.
Thanks, everyone. It seems like there is a broad spectrum coming through, but I think as a minimum, I've seen 2 weeks there. So yeah, thank you for your responses. And so now we'll get into a bit more about KOPE.
Great. So yeah, let's get into KOPE. So today, obviously, we're excited to talk to you about our transformative solution that addresses the challenges that many of you are facing across the industry. The webinar, we're going to explore how the KOPE's configurator essentially can revolutionise how organisations like yourselves can design and build, but make the process faster and more efficient than ever before. So we'll discuss obviously how KOPE can help you drive growth, enhance profitability, shorten tender return timelines, and automate process within the organisation that you operate within. And we know that you want and need to have tools and a team that can adapt to changing conditions quickly. So these tools need to be powerful enough to support smaller, more agile teams, but still enable you to have capacity and redundancy at critical times. So it's fair to say that construction is in trouble. We are facing skill shortages, escalating costs, and the urgent need to address climate challenges. Traditional construction processes aren't sustainable. Offsite does offer solutions, but it's fragmented and hard to integrate at scale. KOPE is here to change that.
Right, so we have 3 key hurdles to overcome, which we're going to get into. We have variation, visibility, and verification. So just starting with variation, as we are all very aware, traditional construction has had a linear process for a very long time. meaning that our design decisions are typically made in isolation, and this leads to that all too familiar inefficiencies, project delays, and costly rework. But we believe one of the keys to unlocking these efficiencies is adopting a product platform approach. And what we mean by that is using a standardized kit that can be configured and assembled in various ways to create unique yet efficient buildings, not that kind of cookie cutter approach that people often talk about. And by reusing a kit, it means we can take learnings from previous projects and start to refine that kit, gain more efficiencies, gain more value from it. And we can share the right information from that kit at the right time and inform and influence those decisions earlier on, right from the beginning when informing a brief. So just to set the scene a little bit, the UK government have backed the new approach. They've consolidated demand across a broad portfolio of projects. For example, we've got a target to construct 500 schools in this decade. And the UK government began by examining all of those spaces needed for all of those schools and boiled that down and identified key space types based on frequency, the activities, and the value-driven attributes of those spaces. And we were then able to create a demand of over 14,700 classrooms. And actually nearly 3/4 of those shared a consistent 8-metre span. And so if we take each of those classrooms and break that down into a kit of parts, we can create a set of low variety building elements. And boiling that down a little bit further, that means we can create a pipeline of over 220,000 linear meters of internal wall that frame each of those classrooms. And we need to make that in this decade, and no manufacturer can do that alone. And if we ensure that all of that pipeline has standardized and structured specification requirements relating to its size, performance, and how it connects with other parts, it will enable multiple manufacturers to respond with their product solutions and simplify the coordination and exchange of information when integrating those into projects. So as you can see, the built environment is already largely standard and has ample opportunity to use these repeatable elements. But I want to stress that the product platform approach is not just about assembling that kit of parts in our design models. It's about enabling the translation into a kit of products. So when you consider any construction project of any building typology, we can really boil that down to the concept of project and products that go into it. And standardization is a combination of different project requirements and different products. And they end up making unique projects. And if we have a more productized supply chain, we can design projects with the products in mind at the beginning, rather than the other way around, which we often see. But unlike your static digital products, so we've got a wealth of BIM objects out on the internet right now, we believe that to truly define a product that is manufactured and part of a productized supply chain, we need more than that. And so what we're doing at KOPE is we're embedding a digitalized rulebook that dictates how the product can and cannot be configured when integrating that into your projects. So we're not storing geometry, we're actually coding that rulebook and we're generating geometry off the back of that. So designing with those known manufacturing capabilities, which is that rulebook, and embedding that up front allows for that early validation, saving time, reducing rework, and speeding up that project delivery. And ultimately, our goal here really is to empower both designers and suppliers to make those informed decisions in both the design process, but also the practical application, and giving those suppliers the control over how their products enter the market. And so just to kind of consider our current design process, buildings don't end up being built exactly how we tend to draw them. The elements aren't these monolithic elements as you see in front of us. We need to break those down into those individual product components that are manufacturable. And KOPE is the digital platform bringing this vision to reality. We digitize the logic of your products and seamlessly configure and integrate them into our design models. So we're acting as a bridge between those offsite products from different suppliers and projects, really encouraging that supplier involvement and feedback early on. So jumping straight into KOPE's configurator space. So first, I'm going to jump straight into our file manager. So here you'd upload your 3D design model, whether that's your own project or one you've received from a client. So KOPE supports IFC format. So what that allows you to do is export from various design softwares that you might use and upload to KOPE. So coming back into the configurator, I'm going to open up a study. And here what we'll do is essentially select the 3D model that we want to use in this particular case. So in this demo, we've got some various different typologies here, and today we're just going to use the office building as an example. So that's just gonna refresh this a second. There you go. So it's just taking a few seconds to load that in to the configurator space. And what we're going to do is from our supply chains, so here we've got a group of KOPE demo products that we've set up. We've kind of created these white label products ready for us to play around with. So these aren't specific to any supplier at the moment. And what we're going to do is add an internal partition plasterboard system as an example, load that in, and I'm going to straight away apply that to our 3D model. So that's just going to take a few seconds to run. And what you'll see straight away is we've got two models here. We've got the original IFC that we loaded in, and we've got the KOPE generated model of the internal partition. So I'm just going to turn off the IFC just so we can see what KOPE's generated here. So as you can see, we've got the geometry, we've got the panels that it's placed. And in our 3D viewer, you can start to interrogate what KOPE's generated. You can see that it's placed the plasterboard and it's placed some studs inside of that. And on the right-hand side here, you can see some outputs and core metrics on what KOPE's generated. So you can see that it's placed 1,129 pieces. So that's accounting for both the plasterboard and the studs. You can see the types of panels that have been generated. So in this particular case, we have defined, or the manufacturer would also define a type maybe as geometry and size and shape. So we've counted the number of boards that create this whole solution in this project, the studs, the channels, and then we've got notional costs as well. So we can start to understand the impact of our decisions. We can also start to include embodied carbon, but this will really depend on the particular product and what the supplier will expose to you as a user when applying these products. So if we like this potential solution, we can save that result. We can just give it a name. And save that for later, and we can then return back to that in a short while. But if we're interested in exploring more solutions within that product, we can actually over here start to play around with its variables. So whilst a supplier might have fixed rules around a maximum and minimum size panel they can make, there's going to be a degree of flexibility depending on your project requirements. So in this scenario, we might want to reduce our stud centers because of structural requirements. We might actually want to apply various different boarding to that scenario, and we might want to maximize our board sizing and see what impact that has on anything. And strategy wise, we can start to play around with how KOPE deals with openings. So KOPE is able to understand what an opening is, whether that's a door, whether that's a window, and we can tell it how to treat those. Do we want the panels to break centered above those openings, or maybe we want them to break either side? So we can start to play around with that too, and we'll save that configuration. And what we can do is then run that again. So that will just take just a few seconds. And over here on the right-hand side, you'll see that these numbers change, and we'll review that once we get those up. So this is really about giving your manufacturers that control over what a designer can and cannot play around with. And so I'm just going to quickly turn off that IFC model again so we can start to see the new result. So as you can see, the board size has increased, so KOPE's now maximizing those board sizes. And if we start to interrogate that a little bit, you can see that the centers have closed down into the 400 mil centers. And over here, whilst the pieces placed have stayed largely the same, that's because we've increased our board numbers because we were maximising the sizes, but we've actually increased the use of studs because we've closed down our centres. So you can see that and how that live reacts to what those variables and those inputs have. And so again, I might want to save this solution for later and come back to it. And I'm going to jump straight back into presentation mode. John, we can't see the presentation a second. Yeah, perfect. Great. So now just thinking a little bit more about visibility, and imagine if all components and all suppliers and all designers could speak the same language, where suppliers provided that digital version of their products with structured and standardized information, and that perfectly aligned with that structured information in your kit of parts design model. It would make that integration and coordination straightforward and reliable. But the question still stands, how do we find the right products? So picture an open platform, a centralized hub where designers can explore the entire offsite construction sector for suppliers, case studies, and products, making it easy to find and use the right materials and the right products for any of your projects. So, for example, a designer can set the parameters of the requirements for fire and acoustic rating for your internal wall package, and for it to immediately match with a list of suitable products and suppliers on a marketplace. But also think about those products you find yourself specifying in nearly every project, like internal walls or your bathrooms. So KOPE will let you save and create groups of these products, whether they're pre-qualified, belong to specific specialisms or regions, projects, or maybe they're a preferred supplier list you want to use again and again. So this is about making it easy to essentially apply your favorite products to your projects in the KOPE Construct environment really quick and easy. It's about saving time and having your go-to items right there when you need them. And so for those of you who aren't familiar already, we've obviously got our KOPE market. Here in the UK, it's MMC market. We've also got one in North America with further expansion scheduled in the new year. So as you can see straight away, you can search your suppliers, as I mentioned, your specifiers, case studies, and products. So today we're just going to go straight into our product search function. And first you might start by searching what category of product you're looking for. So in this particular demo today, we're just going to jump straight in as a full structural shell, which might be what you're looking for. So the MMC market's going to create a long list of suppliers which match that criteria. But obviously at the moment we've got 24 results, and there might be more kind of attributes or about that product that you really want to filter and whittle that list down to something that's more specific for your needs. So as an example, it might be that you've got a project that's above 11 meters and you actually want to start focusing on steel products. So we can filter that down. So obviously we've got 2 on here currently today. And so it's looking like Utopia is a great option for us. And we can go to Utopia's build system product page. We can learn a little bit about that product. We can here start to learn about what attributes it has, what materials it's made of, a little bit about its dimensional capabilities. So we can see here that it's 185 millimeters in depth, but it has a range of lengths between these two kind of minimum and maximum panel sizes. And also we can start to see some basic information. Utopia might add various documentations for you to download, whether that's kind of technical data, whether that's installation manuals, whether that's well, anything they want to attach to help educate you on their product. And also there is the ability to add BIM content for suppliers too, if that's what they want. But also I can then go through to Utopia's organisation page and I can learn a little bit more about them as a business. I can learn about what services they offer as kind of business as usual or on request. And we can start to see some case studies they've worked on and start to understand their experiences and what sectors they work in and where their location is, start to look at their certifications as a business, and you can contact them directly through the marketplace. Now, if I think Utopia is a product and a supplier that I want to try out on my particular project, what I can do is add that to one of my supply chains in KOPE Construct. So here I'm going to add to the KOPE demo products, which is where we just were, and add that in there. So just to show you where that appears in the KOPE Construct environment, what we've got here is the ability to manage your market profile, which we just showed Utopia's example just there. So we can edit and manage that and keep that up to date. We can manage our case studies. We can add new case studies as they come. And here we are, we've got the management of our supply chains. So if we go into KOPE demo products as an example, here we've got Utopia's organisation and products within that supply chain. And obviously we've got our KOPE demo products, which we've been demonstrating previously. So finally, let's just think about that verification challenge that we see, and back to that linear process. So the tender process compounds the issue of fragmentation and data transfer, which often is the cause of our delays. Architects and engineers want to know their choices are manufacturable during building design, but currently solutions don't provide them that timely feedback on that impact. But by using a kit of parts approach to define our brief and our kind of unique project designs, we can easily translate those parts into products, as we've demonstrated through that structured data and automation approach in KOPE Construct. But the last piece of that puzzle is about helping to inform and influence those decisions by providing accurate and valuable insights from the integration of those products into our project files. And another example of that really as well is post-bid, is when we tend to speak to our suppliers, typically as a contractor in most cases. We want to be able to make finding equivalent products at a later stage easy. So for example, you might find suddenly supplier A has run into some issues and has issued a delay on their products coming through. And what we want to do is make it easy to quickly and easily find a suitable alternative and integrate that into the project. But we need to enable that integration by being able to compare various product solutions, matching your project requirements. And so navigating those complexities of selecting and verifying the right products, like our internal walls, we want to make streamlined with KOPE, and the ability to automate output creation and comparison, offering swift and accurate verification. And so just jumping back into KOPE Configurator, where we left you just a moment ago, what we also want to demonstrate is the ability to explore different manufacturers' products and run multiple systems. So an example might be, we want to add in a precast concrete wall panel to that too, and load that product in. To also maybe add in a precast concrete floor plank and add that in. So I'm just going to hit run with that one. So while KOPE's generating that, here you can see that KOPE's generated a 3D model for each of those product solutions. I'm going to go ahead and switch off that IFC model for you, just so you can see what KOPE's generated as solutions. So it's translated all of those building elements in line with the manufacturer's capabilities. And over here, you can see that we've got the outputs for each of those products outlined here, so you can start to understand the impact of those decisions. So again, for example, we've got the concrete floor plank, we've got 245 placed, 24 primaries, 221 secondary planks. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and save that result. And so as kind of KOPE's prompting here, what we can do is go to our results page. So our results page is where we store all of those kind of saved solutions that you potentially might consider when moving forward with your project or going into tender. But what we can do from here is we can select those 3 solutions that we ran with you today, and we can compare them side by side. So by using that structured data and those outputs that we generated, we're able to compare apples with apples. So we can start to see the impact of those variables that we've changed and the different products that we've added. So we can do that side by side for each of those products that we've added to the file. Now, an example, we could go into solution Z because that might be our preferred one. And what we can do is we can dive deeper into that result. And where we land initially is essentially a read-only version of what we had in the configurator. So you can go back and reference all of those variables you input into that solution, so you know what you tried. And also you've got access to your 3D model too, so you can start to play around and interrogate that too, as you could do in the configurator. But then we've got a metrics tab, which is a deeper dive into data around that solution. So we can start to think a little bit more about, for example, here your plasterboard type specifications, your boarding waste breakdown, and again, a lot of those high level figures that you've got here, which again, the manufacturer can control on what they want to expose and what they want to demonstrate about their product and their solutions. But also interesting, what we've got here is we've got tables and schedules, which will essentially give you a list of all of those panel types in the internal wall panel system, as an example. So we'll give it a part number. Again, the manufacturers told us how they want to number those products, its overall dimensions, whether it's complex cut or not. So in this scenario, in this demo product, we kind of define a complex cut as there's an opening in it, or it's not a simple kind of rectangular shape. So we can start to quantify tasks and processes against each of those products. And then we've obviously got a count next to them as well. And we've got that for all of the solutions that we ran. And then finally, what we've got here is the ability to download your 3D models. So we've got IFC and Revit models. And what we also do at the moment is we are able to automatically generate a drawing pack for that. So we can do component drawings, we can do general arrangement drawings. This isn't part of our demo environment at the moment. So if you are interested in seeing a little bit more about the automation of deliverables on the drawing perspective, we'll happily set up a call with you and we can walk you through that and show you that on a separate call.
Great, thanks, Charlotte. So let me move us on a little bit. Obviously, Charlotte's taking you through some demonstration there of the product, which is great, and hopefully you've been able to see even some potential benefits maybe to yourselves. So let's just dive into some case studies quickly, just to look at how other people who have engaged with the platform so far, you know, how it's made a difference for them and their organization and their clients. So the first one is from Lang O'Rourke. So most of you will be familiar with Lang's, founded in 2001. They've pioneered obviously modern construction methods using technologies to deliver certainty for clients and construct iconic projects worldwide. So what they came to us with in terms of the challenge was that they wanted to digitize the product logic of their lattice floors to enable their engineers across the team to design with certainty within the constraints and boundaries of the engineering, manufacturing and assembly capabilities in a more efficient and accurate way, without the need for a wealth of experience or knowledge, right? So if they were new to the team, all that information and knowledge and so on could be built in and they could still utilize it. So the solution that we provided essentially was that after a series of workshops, obviously gathering information on how the system worked and all its kind of conditions, we were able to capture that intrinsic system logic inherent to the project and then publish that to KOPE. So within KOPE itself, the product encompasses manufacturing capabilities, project-driven constraints, and intricate relationships between building elements. So that includes things like walls, columns, and slab edges. And by accurately capturing these relationships, the product is instantly able to be applied to any model and produce obviously optimized and constructible design solutions. So the successful integration of that project logic basically has marked a significant milestone for Langerock in that they've been able to significantly reduce time, embed rapid exploration of design options, and improve decision making, as well as streamlining the tender process that they go through. With enhanced accuracy and reliability, KOPE has empowered them basically to navigate the complex projects that they have and optimize for constructability as quickly as possible. So some of the metrics that they've seen sort of as an ROI, they've seen obviously 30% more accuracy in their costing, a reduction of design time of around 90%, and have also been able to explore more design solutions in a shorter time frame, or even same time frame as they normally would, by up to 100 times. So KOPE's given them a lot of flexibility to be able to obviously enhance what they're able to offer within the timeframes that they work within. The second case study, then, is from B Collective. So you might be a little bit less familiar with these guys. They're Canadian based. They were established in 2020. They're an offsite manufacturer, and they have a product called BOSS, BOSS, which is a panelized stick-based wall panel. They basically seek to build sustainable and affordable housing focused on duplexes and larger buildings across the metropolitan Vancouver area. So again, their challenge was that they'd already utilized virtual design and construction, or VDC, in their processes, but wanted to reduce errors and optimize the placement of their BOSS product to help them reduce waste before construction began. So again, looking at how they could optimize the material usage that they have when they're creating those products. So the solution then was that we, again, captured the product rules for the BOSS system and obviously the strategies that go along with that. And these were all encoded into a template within KOPE itself. Once deployed, B Collective's designers essentially could then easily integrate their product into live project models, as you've seen in the demonstrations earlier, enabling an automated design process. So their designers are able then to rapidly test different designs, look at, again, those options that might fit with certain criteria that they have, and leverage KOPE's optimization engine, to find the optimal solution. So utilizing KOPE, they've been able to undertake the early stage design in several hours, which typically previous to that would have taken several weeks to complete. And as solutions are based on their product's requirements and constraints, they can obviously address difficult design complexities much earlier in the design process, and then ensure that they've designed an efficient solution before they begin manufacturing. So they've now got that design process that matches the speed that they experience whilst they're exiting buildings on site. So again, looking at some of those kind of key metrics that they've seen since adopting KOPE, they've achieved a 15% reduction in material waste, and obviously that's improving every day, every week that goes by that they use the system. They've also seen a 25% increased level of standardization, so getting away from a lot of customized components within the buildings, and then more move to standardization, which is obviously helpful from cost and, again, material wastage and that kind of thing. And then 100% accuracy in validating their design approach. So they're able to kind of validate that within the platform quite quickly. So while offsite construction offers a solution, integrating at scale is often disjointed and challenging. That's our kind of take on that. KOPE is the only purpose-built platform for offsite construction. Its ability to bridge the gap between design and construction sets it apart. We do this basically by enabling you to search for, find, and apply real-world products and apply them to your projects. And then we're enabling you to explore the impact they have on your design, all of which is obviously connected to the leading marketplace that Charlotte showed you earlier for offsite, meaning you're able to optimize your choices based on your goals, whether that's cost, carbon, or other key data points. So we're basically helping you solve problems like slashing waste, cutting costs, and minimizing carbon. Offsite, we believe, solves problems, and then we believe that KOPE is helping solve the problems within offsite. So as I mentioned earlier, we'd love to hear from you. I've seen quite a lot of questions come in, so we'll tackle some of these in a second. But if you haven't got your questions in yet, again, just pop back on either pop them in the chat as other people have done, or on Slido, using the details that I shared earlier. All right, Charlotte, do we want to? I've written a couple because there's some themes that are coming through as well. So let's start with I think probably the easier ones, and then we'll pick up some of the more difficult ones in a second.
Yeah,
So
sure.
there's a general theme around IFC. Obviously, we mentioned that we suck in IFC at the start of the process. So there's a couple of different questions about this. So let's go through them. So the first one was, does it support anything other than IFC?
Yeah, so KOPE is an IFC only platform. And we've done that so that you can export an IFC from your design software that you use. We want to be agnostic to everything that's out there. So IFC is what the format that we use. So the answer is no, it's just IFC format we work with.
Is there any requirements, particularly around things like the level of detail that the IFCs need to adhere to? Is like a level where it's appropriate that basically that KOPE's going to work?
Yeah, great question. So KOPE can ingest any 3D design model. It's not going to kind of stop in the middle of anything. What it will do, sorry, I'll start with, so it can consume any. I think KOPE will work best to your kind of typical stage 3 level of design, because that's really where we're focusing on the tender process. But you can upload any model. What I would say is if there's anything that KOPE can't handle, so an example would be curved walls. Right now, we're not handling curved walls. It won't kind of stop and not generate. It will kind of ignore those elements that it cannot handle and warn you of that and tell you why it can't handle that.
Great. And there's a plan to pick that up in our roadmap, isn't there? So
absolutely,
we don't do it at the moment, but it will be coming. Cool. And then the other one is sort of related to, obviously we are ingesting things like IFC at the start of the process. So a couple of questions revolve around kind of the design process essentially. So one part is what happens if the design changes? Does KOPE automatically update the products that have been applied to the design as it was, and then understands the difference between the design changes and then reapplies? And then sort of the second part of that is this kind of a one direction only, right? So we ingest, but we have a dead end essentially, or can people come out the other side and go back to other parts of the design process?
Yeah, okay, I'll take that first one first. So the design process, so that was where the file manager really comes in. So whilst we kind of demonstrated 3 different kind of typologies as an example, I think realistically we would see people within a project environment uploading revisions of those design models. And so when you're running that particular design model in the configurator and you're saving the result, it will know and remember which model you ran that against. So you're able to track which results and solutions were associated with which design models. So yeah, you'd be able to manage those different ones, but you would have to run that again. So you'd upload the new model into the file manager, go into the configurator, reapply those same settings as you did before, and generate it again and save a new result with that model attached to it.
And just to be clear on that, I don't know if I can't remember because we had it previously, Charlotte, when we tested it, but the system does save the products that you've applied in the last test. So if you're not changing the products or you're not changing the configuration of those, you're not having to kind of reapply those settings again, right? It keeps those.
Yeah, where you last were, absolutely. Yeah. And the second part of that question was, remind me, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so it's about just the direction of travel essentially from a design process. So we ingest obviously IFC at the start. Is KOPE basically a dead end, or can people kind of come out of that and continue a design process?
Yeah, so that's kind of the export. So the Revit and IFC export at the end of that process in the deliverables. So from your result, you can export your drawings, your schedules, and your 3D models. So you would continue that design process by essentially linking that model back in to that design process that that you've described and continue that workflow on.
Yeah. And then I think just a couple of points on that as well, just to kind of round that out. There was another sort of semi-question in there, which I haven't said yet. The question was about whether there's a backlink to the originating model. So we don't, it doesn't have a link as such. So you wouldn't have like a file on a desktop or a server or whatever that we're linking to. You actually upload that into the system. So that's the first thing. But the other part of that then is we are, as much as we currently export back out into IFC for obvious reasons, so that you can use any design solutions that you want beyond KOPE. There is plans in place again in the roadmap to have the ability to just export out to certain formats. So the more common ones obviously we'll tackle first, and then others will come along as and when needed by demand from customers and things. We did have that, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlotte, we did have that working, but we've done a technical change recently in the platform. So some of that, while it did work in the past, is just need an update to reconnect.
Yes. I'm just looking at some more. So I really like does the metric data also include sustainability metrics? So obviously we've put these kind of white label products in KOPE ourselves, but what we do have is when a manufacturer comes along and adds their product to KOPE, we will expose whatever data they want us to expose, and whether they want that to be public or private for external use or internal use. So for people like architects to be running their product on KOPE, or whether they want to run that themselves and keep that behind a public private wall. But yeah, if they've got the data about their product, and if they can tell us how we calculate that, so I know it's not as simple as this, but if they can tell us that on their panels per square meter the embodied carbon equals X, obviously we'll very quickly be able to calculate that for you and expose that data, simplifying that. But yeah, we can, whatever the supplier wants us to put into KOPE, we can expose it at the back end. So it's really up to the manufacturers on managing and controlling how their product enters the market and what they want to showcase about that product.
And there's another one relating to metrics there as well, Charlotte, around costs. How do we keep the database for that up to date?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. So this is really up to the manufacturers on how they want to manage that cost. So a couple of our clients, this example, don't want to put cost out there because they want to manage that tender process and the costing outside of KOPE, whereas some of our suppliers absolutely want to put a notional cost out there and be competitive. So again, it's really a platform for our suppliers to use as they see fit in order to promote and sell their product.
Great. Cool. Just quickly on the chat, we'll come back to the Slido ones in a sec. There's a couple others on the chat. One of the first ones that came in was the WSH factory in Germany uses a panelized approach, so they don't use the kit of parts methodology. The question was, the panels can be any size based on the boundary parameters of the wall or ceiling machine that makes that, obviously. Obviously, this is there to optimize from a design flexibility perspective. Can KOPE be programmed to work along the manufacturing parameters of the machines?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, it depends what you mean interlinked, but what we do is we kind of define products as, well, we categorize them at KOPE. So we've got your kind of kit of parts where you have standard size wall panels, and KOPE will place them and optimize that placement multiple times within the 3D model. Or you've got what we kind of call more of a system approach, where KOPE will generate a wall panel at any size between a minimum and a maximum. So a supplier might say, I can only manufacture a wall less than 12 meters in length and 3 meters in height, and KOPE will never generate a solution that is bigger than that, and likewise with the smaller than. And KOPE is also able to then optimize and on various different strategies. So when you're running that in KOPE, one of those strategies is the variable input might be about reducing the number of types that KOPE generates. because you might want to standardize the different sizes, but it's reading the design and giving you the optimum solution off the back of the project design model. Or it might be that in the case of, say, concrete floor planks, instead of reducing the number of types, you might want to actually just maximize the panel sizes, the plank sizes, and give me the least number of instances, because a crane might be particularly expensive for this particular site. And so they might want to minimize the number of lifts. So that input variables is really about providing that flexibility within those rules. Because project to project things can change, and your kind of strategies and your goals and aspirations might change.
Cool. I've just highlighted one from Slido there.
Yep.
Tom's asked, how do we see COPE aiding transparent collaboration between client, architect, contractors within D&B contracts?
Yeah, good question. So kind of breaking that down, I guess, a little bit. So I'm going to kind of categorize people as specifiers, people who are looking for products and buying products and selecting products, and those people who are selling them and manufacturing them and providing them. So there's a number of ways which it's transparent. Obviously, we've got the market, so people are able to see everything all in one place, search and filter that data all in one place. And the transparency really comes in that comparison, I think, where you're able to run different products, compare them side by side. I think that's really where we're creating that transparency and just making it accessible, making it available, making it quick, easy and simple, from both perspectives. So designers can immediately understand the impact of different products on their design models, and suppliers are able to control that, and they're exposing exactly what capability their products can and can't do in order to gain the maximum efficiencies from it.
Oh, great. Couple of, just a minute or two left. I think we maybe squeeze one more in. Yeah, there's a couple of different ones here. Let's go on the chat. So Nigel was asking, how much time typically would a designer need to invest to get up and running on COPE? And then his second question was that how many organizations are currently using it? I'll take the second part of that if you want to grab the first part.
Yeah, so how much time designers need to invest? Nothing. Sign up, get a license, start playing around with it. I'd encourage you to sign up to our demo space, so you can start to play around with that and get a feel for what COPE is. So yeah, no time at all. I think we do often get asked about 3D models versus 2D drawings. Obviously, we need 3D geometry, so that's the time you have to invest as a designer. We need walls, we need floors, we need roofs and cladding things modeled to whatever level of detail in order to translate that into a product. So, but I know Nigel Hawkins Brown, I know that's always going to be the case. You're always going to have a 3D model. So, yeah, nothing at all.
Cool. And then in terms of just that second part there about how many folks are using it already, obviously, as Charlotte's mentioned, I think in 2 questions back there, we kind of split our users into 2 categories essentially, albeit within those, obviously, there's a very sort of big subset of what that means. So we've got suppliers and specifiers. At the moment, the majority of our users are what we term suppliers, both in terms of the marketplace that you saw and the configurator, for obvious reasons, right? Because the way that we've built the feature set right now, essentially it kind of talks more to their workflows and so on at this stage. And it's a recognition within us around the vision that we have for the platform that without the supplier element being there, it's harder for specifiers to be involved in the product. So yeah, so the kind of the amount of organizations, I'm not 100% sure on the exact numbers. I can get that back across to you after the session, but the majority of our users sit on that supplier side at the moment. But we do have both sides of the fence, but yeah, the majority sit on the other side. Cool, last one, and then I'll I think we'll wrap it up. Let me have a look. So on Slido, Charlotte, I think we've got a couple. Let's look. We kind of covered. So we've covered things like complexity of models when we talked about LOD. So one of the questions actually is about what's the maximum complexity of models that this can cope with. I would just go ahead and say, look, we haven't got to a limit yet. The limits that we've found is obviously the things that Charlotte mentioned there about curved walls and things, but that's because we haven't built the program currently to understand that. But in terms of size, we've had schools in sort of multi-floor apartment blocks and so on and so forth, which haven't broken it yet. So there probably will come a point where we get to a maximum, but we haven't quite found that boundary yet. Then
just to chip in there, I'd say, just to kind of set the scene a little bit more, because it's really hard to describe what complexity is really. But I think working with Laing O'Rourke, we were consuming pretty complex models of, Baker Street. They've got a building going on in Baker Street. We were able to consume that, translate that into their concrete planks, and they're pretty complex. So we're challenging COPE, but it's dealing with it.
We built it for that principle of kind of being as flexible as possible and adapting to pretty much every scenario that comes along. Let's see where we get to if something breaks it, and we can get back to you on that one. Maybe we'll do a session on that, Charlotte. What's broken COPE at some point? Cool. All right. There was one or two last questions, but what I'll do is I'll try and follow up with those on email, although a couple of people are anonymous. So if we didn't answer your question or you want a bit more detail or whatever, feel free to email me or Charlotte, obviously. I'll just slip to the next slide so you can get that detail. Cool. So if you drop an email to myself or indeed Charlotte, same idea. So just charlotte.garrett, and then we can get back to you on those ones. Just quickly before we go and before you dive off, obviously we'd love it if you guys have enjoyed the session and you want to know more, or you want to maybe get a demonstration, or maybe even get your hands on the product and get a feel for it for yourselves. And we can obviously set up an environment where you can use what we call our benchmark systems against our demonstration projects, so you can get a feel for that and how it might benefit yourselves. Again, just reach out on the email and we can get that set up. So that's pretty much it really for now. So thanks for joining, obviously, for coming to hear about how we think offsite is able to solve construction industry challenges, and obviously how COPE itself is going to help shift offsite construction methods to a more used space. We appreciate your attendance and hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. Please make sure to follow us on social media, obviously, if you don't already, and spread the word to colleagues and peers as well. Again, if you want the recording, get in touch and we can send that across. Otherwise, I think that's it for today. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.